Hey there, Igor's here. Today we're gonna analyze a really interesting endgame, which is two knights versus a king. It happened in a game between Sergey Karjakin playing white and Sevian playing black. Sevian being one of the most talented US players, and he just played knight takes b2, turning the game into this theoretical endgame, and he was probably hoping that it is a draw, even though it turned out that he was probably a little bit too optimistic. There are a couple tips and tricks that you need to know about this endgame, whether you have knights and are trying to win the game or if you are on a defensive side. But before we move on to the game itself, let me just thank you guys for your support. We have just crossed 64,000 subscribers on the channel of the Remote Chess Academy, which is pretty cool. It's a very chess number, and I just wanted to thank you and to also celebrate this occasion with a little but nice giveaway. We'll be giving away $150 coupons to 3 of you guys. And the only thing that you need to do basically is just to be subscribed to the channel, because this is for our community. And the second thing is to leave a comment down below letting me know what are the subjects that you wish us to cover for you in our future videos. Whether you're interested in an opening, middle game, end game, or strategy or tactics, or if there's a certain player that you wish us to cover more, or basically whatever questions or topics that you have, just provide it in the comments down below, and one of those commentators will be selected 1 week later for receiving this giveaway prize of $150 coupon. Alright, and without further ado, let's move on. Sevian played here pawn to g5, inviting Karjakin to grab the pawn, which Karjakin wisely did not do, because surprisingly in this case, if white captures the pawn, which would be a terrible mistake, this is a draw. It's just a theoretical draw with two knights versus a king. You cannot win because of a stalemate. And that is why it is so critical for white to actually save this pawn instead of taking it. And to prevent this pawn from moving forward and forcing white to eventually capture it at one point, white has to blockade this pawn with his knight, which he did by playing knight to d4 check, first of all, and then knight goes to f5, and after black tries to sacrifice this pawn, white blockades it with his knight. And now the pawn is blocked, it can't move forward anymore, and therefore white can start realizing his winning plan. And by the way, here is a quick rule of thumb for you. If the black's pawn did not cross the 4th rank, it is considered that white has good winning chances. It's not always 100% accurate, and nevertheless practically it is more or less true. Just like in this position, white managed to blockade the black's pawn on the 4th rank, it couldn't go any further, and therefore it gives white quite good winning chances in this position. Even though, of course, if white could have potentially blockaded the black's pawn earlier, when it was somewhere on the g5, on g6, or on g7, it would be even easier for white to win. And on the contrary, if the black's pawn would be able to move just one square forward, that would secure a draw for black. Alright, let's move on. Black played king to d4, which is absolutely correct. Black definitely should try to keep his king in the center as long as possible, whereas the white should try to push the black's king back to the edge, which is what white is trying to do. He plays king to f2, black goes king to c3, knight to d1 check, king goes back to d3, and the white king goes to e1. And now you can see basically the method, how white manages to push the opponent's king back. With the help of the white's knight, white can control 2 squares around the opponent's king, and the white's king can control the 3rd square. And it creates some sort of a barrier on the way of opponent's king and forces it to go away. And gradually it allows white to push the opponent's king all the way back to the last rank, where white can start trying to checkmate the king. Here black played king to c4, king d2, king e4, knight c3, king to c4, knight goes to e2. Once again, you can see the same kind of harmony between the white's king and the knight. The knight controls 2 squares and the king controls the 3rd square, which forces the black's king to go away. So once again, we can see the same pattern. King goes to c3, king to c5, knight f4. Once again, the knight controls the square d5, forcing the black's king to go back, which is what he does. Then king to c4. I don't comment every single move because it's not that much critical. You just need to remember this general pattern that you should try to use your knight to control 2 squares nearby the opponent's king and use your king to control the third square, which would create this sort of a barrier on the way of opponent's king and eventually will force it to go back. Black plays king to c6, knight e5 check, king to 6, king to d4, king goes to e6, knight to c4. Karjakin is trying to maneuver with his knights, forcing the black's king to go back. And here Sevian played king to f6, which is a big mistake, even though it's not an obvious thing. Now, what's the point? Here's the thing. The white's winning plan is to push the opponent's king back to the last rank, somewhere there, and then eventually trying to push the king to the corner of the board. And at one point, this knight on g3, which is currently doing nothing, will be able to join the party and to help white checkmate the king. And therefore, for black, it does make sense to try to keep his king as far away as possible from the white's knight on g3, just to complicate the white's realization of his plan. And therefore, for the black's king, ideally, he should try to keep it in the center, if he can. And if he can't, then if he has to move backward to the last rank, at least he should aim for that corner on the a8, which is, as far away from the white's knight as it possibly can. And here Sevian didn't know this little trick, and it actually costed him the game. As you can see, he moves it to f6 instead of trying to move the king, away somewhere to d7 and c7. And it actually helps white. Even now you can see that the white's knight on g3, which previously was doing nothing, just blockading the pawn, now all of a sudden it starts helping white to restrict the opponent's king. The black played king to e6, knight goes to f5, king d7, king d5, and gradually white just realizes his plan. And here black makes basically the same mistake once again. Here he goes king to f6, which brings his king closer to the white knight, once again allowing white to use his knight actively. What black should have done instead? Well, very simple. He should have moved it to e8 and then eventually tried to go to that corner a8 when it is forced to go there. In the real game he played king to f6. By the way, king to e8 would lead to a draw. As you can see, just really interesting game. Just one move, which seems to be so obvious, such as king to f6, can cost one a game. Now, white plays knight e4 check, king goes to f7, and now white goes king to d7. And currently you can see a really beautiful harmony between the white's knights. Together they're controlling basically all the squares on the way of the black's king. So it can't really go out of this sort of a cage in the corner of the board. Black goes king d8, knight goes to d6, king g7, king to e6, and the white's winning plan, by the way, let me mention that as well. The white's winning plan is to push the black's king to the corner which is closer to the white's knight on g3. So ideally speaking, the white wants to bring the black's king to this h8 square, to lock it there, and at one point to utilize his knight on g3 to actually deliver a checkmate. This is what happened in the game, and just let's see how Karjakin did it. At this point he played king to f6. Actually, he could have finalized the game even quicker at this point, because black's king is already at this point, because the black's king is already almost in the corner, and white could have just played knight to f5 and just go for the final attack. And if black goes g3, trying to sacrifice this pawn, white goes knight f6 check, king f8, king h8 first, then king f8, black goes g2, and here as you can see the black's king is in the corner, it's locked there, we only need to deliver a check. And the white's knight can deliver a check from either g6 square or from f6 from f7 square. But of course you gotta choose accurately, because knight d6 is obviously winning the game in a variation like this, whereas if white would try instead to go to g6 and just play knight to h4 and after g1 would try to deliver this checkmate, then you would all of a sudden find out that the square is now controlled by the queen. And this is what happens pretty often in our blitz games. When we play blitz in the internet, we're so close to win, but then something like this happens.
Buddy.
Oh! So you gotta always be careful to avoid that kind of incidents. Alright, let's come back to the actual game. Karjakin played king to f6 at this point, which is a little bit slower way, but it still wins. Black goes king to h7, and then Karjakin came back to the winning plan, which is knight to f5. At one point, obviously, white has to involve the knight into play because he can't checkmate the opponent's king just with a single knight and the king. He has to bring this knight at one point. And let's say black goes king to g8, white goes king to e7 to blockade the black's king so that it can't escape. Here at one point black goes pawn to g3. By the way, you can notice why it's so useful for white to blockade this pawn as early as possible, because the pawn is going to move forward and therefore it gives white only a few moves to deliver the checkmate. And that's why if the pawn stands on the 4th rank, then it still needs these 3 moves to be promoted into a queen, and these 3 moves is enough for white to checkmate black. Just knight f6 check, king h8, king f8, and then just like we saw after g2, the knight goes to the correct square, to d6, and then delivers checkmate on the next move, just like this. I hope that you enjoyed this game and learned a few useful tricks, and if so, hit like for the video, and of course don't forget to check our next video, which will be published in a week from now, where we will announce the giveaway winners, because if you won in this giveaway, then you'll get this $150 coupon for our premium courses. Once again, thanks for your attention, stay safe, be well, take care, and I'll talk to you soon.